Welcome back to the SBS pod, and apologies for the late airing this week, but we are back, and today Kyle and I discuss that heartbreaking loss to Illinois on Tuesday night in what was almost the greatest comeback in recent memory. Talk a little bit about what we think this Bruins squad has in them and just how deep of a run we think they'll put on come March Madness, and what they're going to need to do with the remainder of this schedule to make as deep of a run as we think they can. Of course, we talk plenty of Indiana as well as the Bruins have a big one tonight at 5 p.m. on ESPN in prime time. And all of that and a whole lot more coming up next on the SBS Pod. Okay. First and foremost, shout out Super Bowl champion Kyle Phillips of the Philadelphia Eagles. MVP?
MVP. Did he get in the game?
I didn't know he was on the roster until I saw the Instagram by UCLA Athletics. Can we really quickly talk about that Super Bowl? I know we're a little late, but I have to get it off my chest. The score bug is really, really bothering me.
Yeah, that was bad. It was like a invisible score bug almost, like half the, was colored in, half of it wasn't.
The most accurate description of it that I've seen is like when you use your parents' phone and everything's like hella zoomed in. It's just why is everything? It's just way too big. The font was way too big. Speaking of which, my mom was calling. Sorry, Mom. But yeah,
it did take up a lot of like you could like the receivers at the bottom of the screen were almost covered up at times.
Yeah, like whatever they tried to accomplish with like the invisible parts and making it more transparent, they completely counteracted with the size of those ugly ass, like that font. Terrible. Also, the game was an atrocity.
The game is horrible. I didn't think there were that many great commercials. People are mixed on the halftime show. So yeah, it was a weird Super Bowl.
Yeah, and that's coming from me. Like my dream is to see the Chiefs get annihilated on any given Sunday, and anybody but the Eagles though. The only team that could fuck that up for me is it being the Eagles. So, yeah, brutal. And before we take a dive into men's basketball, want to wish best of luck to women's basketball, who takes on USC. This airs on Thursday, so tonight in a top 10 crosstown showdown, sold out at the Galen Center, and this is a clash of some serious star power here with Betts and Watkins finally meeting for the first time this season. And UCLA also announced that their game in March at Pauley Pavilion is already sold out. So no lack of support from the fans for the women's, and for good reason. The girls are absolutely killing it, and tonight should be a good one.
Absolutely. Anytime you're playing FC, you gotta beat them, especially when you're the two top of the Big Ten Conference.
Yeah, man. Top 10 matchup. I think SC is number 6. UCLA obviously number 1, has not lost a game. So that's gonna be awesome. So looking forward to that. And once again, best of luck to the Bruins. All right, switching over to men's. UCLA men's basketball falls just short against Illinois on Tuesday night in a hostile environment, and just one of those games where you don't really know how to feel, or at least for me personally, just sort of like the lows of this game were very low. And when UCLA looked bad, it looked very bad, like kind of like first time playing together bad. But yet, I feel like you kind of walk away thinking that they might have just been a prayer shot away from Kasparis, Yakachonis?
Yakachonis.
Had that Yakachonis prayer shot not gone in, that's possibly one of the most improbable comebacks in recent memory. I mean, they were down.
Yeah.
The Bruins were down 16. Yeah, Bruins down 16 with under 5 to go, down 76-60, and UCLA then goes on a 13-0 run in a 3-minute and 58-second span to cut it down to just a one-possession game, but ultimately fell just short. And dude, it's not that I feel like super defeated after that game, but I think you kind of said it in the chat, just kind of blue-balled. Like we haven't,
Yeah.
we haven't lost it in like a month. So it's almost kind of just like remembering what it feels like to lose and to be disappointed after what was just such a sick month of winning. So kind of a coming back down to earth moment almost.
Yeah. I mean, you take a look at the remaining schedule, I think this game and the Purdue game are the two hardest, games we have left on our schedule. And like you mentioned, blue balled, right? That comeback was amazing. And for a second there, I really thought that if Jonas doesn't hit that 20 whatever foot jumper, step back, fade away, I mean, that guy's going to be a lottery pick next year. He's a freshman. He's so good. I sort of watched him play a little bit, just watching Big Ten games. But the Bruins just got to get off to a better start. You can't dig yourself that deep in a hole. But somehow we're only down by 6.5, which I think we were going back and forth with. It's like, we've played this bad. How are we down 6? But it really felt like there in the second half, the offense sort of picked itself back up. I don't think we got a stop for a good 8 minutes or so at one point. It just felt like back and forth, and we just couldn't trade baskets. Every time we got down, like back to within 4, they just ended up you would be back down to 10 within like 2 minutes. It was the weirdest game, honestly, for me.
Yeah, it was like a cyclical game, I want to say. It would just be a slump of either shooting or defense where UCLA falls to a deficit where it's just the game was so over. I mean, I thought the game was good. I thought in the first half we were going to get just completely bounced out of the gym. That first half specifically when it comes to offense. I mean, they went there's a 5 for 24 shooting slump midway through the first half. And just the way that the UCLA was missing, it was so ugly the way the shots were not falling, either super strong off the back iron or like hardly hitting the front of the rim. So it was either like it looked kind of like
Andrews
they were
missed a jumper.
Yeah, and that's just kind of when you're like, oh Jesus, like these guys cannot play away from Pauley Pavilion, cannot play away from the West Coast. But then the defense, in the first half was there. I want to say they forced 9 turnovers throughout the first half, and then there was that little scoring run at the end of the first half, and somehow you're looking at a 6-point deficit in a halftime. And at halftime, I couldn't believe that we were still within spitting distance of that game with how we played in the first offensively.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I think a large part of that, I think towards the end of the first half, Mick sort of allowed Mac to sort of, do his thing, and he played a little bully ball. And Bilodeau was outstanding. I think it was his best game of, his career from behind the 3-point line. I mean, 7 for 12. How could it not be?
Oh, yeah, dude. It was definitely his best game from downtown.
Yeah. He's the only reason we were in this game. I mean, look at the box score. I mean, Kobe Johnson definitely contributed as well. But, guys like Eric Daly, really struggled. I think, he did not have it at all yesterday. And I know it's sort of been this norovirus thing that, Cronin has mentioned now that's been going around the team. He just looked slow, looked a little lethargic. So I'm sure he was affected by it. And then obviously we definitely missed a Daimara. He didn't really have any sort of presence in the game at all.
Well, I think the norovirus thing is kind of the elephant in the room. Almost like at this point, Mick admittedly has been, I don't want to use excuses, but he's not afraid to speak his mind on what he thinks kind of causes some of these losses. And he's talked a lot about travel and officiating. So I don't want to jump on the norovirus thing and just be like, oh, UCLA fans and the team are just full of excuses. But, dude, I don't know if you've ever had it or know anybody that's had it.
I had it like 3 weeks ago. It was awful.
Yeah. Now imagine, I mean, it was reported that they were mostly like out of it and they weren't actively like running to the bathroom like at halftime against Illinois. But as recently as Saturday against Penn State after the game, Mick in his post-game presser said that Mara hadn't eaten, Sky Clark hadn't eaten since Wednesday, and that was Saturday. And that's just one guy out of like the 5 that were sick. Mara could hardly even warm up against Illinois. So Illinois, that was kind of one of the first healthy games we've seen from them in a long time. And look at the first half of their season when they were healthy, and they were. I mean, they looked as good as anybody. And this is on the road where UCLA, or at least away from the Pacific time zone where UCLA has so far notoriously struggled. They're 0-4, 0-5 away from the West Coast now.
Yeah, I mean, lost every game outside of, I think it's west of the Rockies, right?
Yeah, so you factor that in, and then this sickness. You're playing guys that have lost 10 pounds in the past week. You don't want to just like be so full of excuses, but that's something that I'm not going to just disregard. And that's why I'm not really letting this loss kind of just take all of the wind out of my sails right now. I'm still excited with the direction that the team's heading in. I just think that there was a very, very, very slim chance that UCLA came out of that game with a win, and they were 2 buckets away from doing so.
100%.
Yeah.
I agree, and I don't think Bruin fans should, be upset with this loss. This is a good loss. It's a quad 1 loss by far. But when you take a look at the rest of the way for Michigan, Purdue, Michigan State, Wisconsin, as well as, Illinois, the rest of the Big Ten schedule, how it shakes out. I mean, these guys are playing gauntlet. So I think for now, UCLA, we just got to try and squeeze into that top 4, which gets you the
double bye,
automatic bid to the quarterfinal, the Big Ten tournament, versus having to play an extra game, the double bye. As long as we can get in there, I mean, these standings are definitely going to shake. And down the stretch, I mean, very winnable games at Northwestern, USC at home, Minnesota at home. Obviously, Purdue on the road's a tough one. Indiana away. I mean, Indiana just beat Michigan State out of nowhere in East Lansing last night. So there is no easy game in the Big Ten, but the way the schedule shakes out the rest of the way, I really do think that UCLA can get into that top 4 of the Big Ten tournament. I think it's a stretch to by any means win any type of regular season conference title. I think that's far lost at this point. But
can UCLA afford 2 more losses if it's to get that top 4 seed in the Big Ten tournament? Or does it have to be win all games, maybe, aside from at Purdue? Is that the situation that they're in?
I think you may be able to afford 2, but it's really got to go in favor in other results. I think if you want to control your own destiny, it's lose at Purdue, win every single other game that you have left on the schedule. And I mean, I think that's very doable as long as UCLA plays with, the demeanor the last 7 games, not turning the ball over, right, playing good defense, and sort of, I think at this point, I expect them to win at Indiana on Friday night. They should know what a Big Ten road environment at this point is like. You've went to Nebraska, right? You've went to Illinois. I'm missing some other road trips. And you went to Maryland, you went to Rutgers, right? At this point, you should sort of get that feeling. And I think we match up well against Indiana team. So I just don't think, except for the Purdue game, I don't think we should be losing anymore. I really don't.
I'm sort of hoping that last minute run against Illinois sort of carries them into Indiana, because I think it might be a totally different mindset and team and vibe in that locker room had they lost that game by, call it 20 points, which with 4 to go looked like it was heading in that direction, versus, now you're flying just a short trip to Indiana in what you could almost consider a must-win game. And you're like, hey, we should have beaten that Illinois team shorthanded without Marr. I'm not going to say that Adai Marr played, because he played what? How many minutes? Was it 6 minutes?
He played 8, but
8 minutes. And he played like he was 11 pounds lighter, which he was.
I mean, you take a look at the box score and the minutes distribution last night. I don't think I've seen a box score like this entire year. I mean, Lazar had 12 minutes. Sebastian Mack had 29, and then everyone else off the bench is in single digits. So you really rotated between 6 guys last night, and the rest, 10 minutes or less, really. So that deep bench that Kernan always talks about, didn't really utilize it last night. Didn't really have it at his disposal. So, I mean, you compare that, you add that with a horrible offensive first half, horrible defensive second half. It's just, you're not going to win a Big Ten road game like that. So it's a valiant effort, but at UCLA, we don't take moral victories, right? But last night honestly felt like a little bit to me, like I could live with that loss, I can.
Yeah. One of the most perplexing things for me against Illinois was, and am I just imagining this, or were Tyler Bilodeau's looks from 3, a lot of them were wide open. They just didn't have a guy on him around the perimeter. And we'll get to Illinois fans in a moment. They are they're a low IQ bunch, to put it kindly. But they're almost treating this Tyler Bilodeau 3-point shooting like some anomaly. Well, it's like, oh, well, it was only close because your Tyler Bilodeau guy was scoring all these threes. And I'm like, dude, Tyler Bilodeau is UCLA's, you can argue maybe inarguably, UCLA's biggest offensive threat. And for whatever reason, he was just unguarded from the perimeter all night long. So it's like, no, that's what happens when you don't put a man on Bilodeau from three. He's got a great stroke, and he was feeling it that night. So I don't fully understand that decision by Underwood. Yeah.
Freaking Bilodeau. I mean, the guy's shooting, let's see, 43% from three this year. Is usually his leading 3-point shooter. I didn't quite understand that either. It seemed like they were really trying to, keep us off the line, keep us from getting downhill. Because even when, Mac's going to get downhill regardless, whether you let him or not. But even when Andrews and Clark seem to, get around pick and rolls and screens, they sort of seem to almost be looking for that. Like, it almost like was in our offensive game plan in a way where maybe they saw something on film that Illinois doesn't really, cover that screener all around the perimeter. So I think our guards were looking for it because our guards weren't very attack minded, like to get to the basket around pick and rolls. They were looking to feed Bilodeau. And he made a living off of it last night. So it wasn't enough, but it was a hell of a game for individually.
Yeah. And I think after the Indiana game, let's see how they perform against them, finishing this quick road trip. Not quick, but finishing this what is it going to be, a week they'll be on the road? Anyways.
Yeah, about a week.
Let's say they lose that game. Now I'm starting to think that staying in the West come March is of the absolute utmost importance because it just UCLA seems like a different team when they leave that part of the country.
Yeah, and you already know the committee is going to do everything in their power to put us not on the West Coast. I feel like even the year in 2022 when we were freaking 29-2 or whatever we were with Hawkins this final year. There were like bracketologies out there of like us as a 1 in the East. And it's like, that doesn't make any sense. And it's almost like these East, West, South, whatever it is, Midwest, they don't even line up most of the time. It's just like, we're throwing people wherever. And I always remember in baseball, like, they were putting teams in the postseason in the same, geographical locations. Like we played Long Beach State in the postseason, we played Fullerton, we played all these sort of Big West WCC schools, LMU, but it just doesn't seem like they do that in basketball. Maybe there's just too many, obviously, but I agree. If we can stay here on the West, I think the West Sweet 16 and Elite Eight are actually in crypto, which would be pretty freaking sweet.
Is it really?
Somehow navigate that. Yeah, it's in crypto. And I know that the West also has a first and second round matchup in Seattle, which would also be dope. That's a quick flight over for me. So if we can stay in the West, it'd be awesome. Sneak into Sweet 16 and head out to crypto.
What would how far in March would you consider this to be a good season? I know we want to say at UCLA we don't even hang banners for Final Fours, but what do you think the ceiling is here? Being realistic, just as a fan, because for me, I'd be stoked with the Sweet 16. I would. I just think
I was just about to say that.
Yeah, with where the lows have been this year, I think if we can find a way, make it to the Sweet 16, and then retain a lot of this group going into next year, I would just feel like we're still heading in the right direction.
It's a young group, right? So I was just about to say Sweet 16 as well, but realistically, I could see them being, if we lose 2 more games, we'll be a 7, 8, 9, and we're going to play another solid, probably SEC team or Big 12 team. If that's the case, we can lose in the first round easily. If we're a 5, we win out, we're a 5, 6, 4, somewhere in that range, do well in the Big 10 tournament. I wouldn't see us losing in the first round, be more so like round of 32, Sweet 16. At that point, you never know what can happen in March. We saw it in 2021 with Juzang. You get hot, you catch fire. Maybe Andrews just somehow pulls a Juzang and turns his entire year around. But yeah, I think Sweet 16 is probably more so where I'm seeing this team finish, if that.
Yeah, I agree. I wonder how people will react or respond to that, or how they'll receive that. I don't mean to say that that's the team's ceiling. It's obviously not. I would say that I thought the UCLA team's ceiling in 2021 was not even making the tournament. Look what happened. So I'm just trying to be realistic.
Right. And they're a young team, right?
Yeah.
Like if we, like you said, we can retain these guys. Like I'm more than happy if you told me that we're gonna make. Shit, I would even be happy if you said we were going to lose in the round of 32 this year and we're going to bring our entire team back except Cosby Johnson and Stefanovic because they're seniors.
Yeah.
And added more pieces.
Is Illinois the new Arizona for us? I mean, we've still yet to play. I mean, that's the fun part about this is that it's like, will I hate the next team UCLA plays more than the one we played previously? And Michigan State sure brought a whole bunch of fans. I didn't really encounter too many shitheads on Twitter when chirping with them. Michigan put a whooping on us at home. I didn't really have any, I don't know, anything too
Nothing
bad.
To say there.
Yeah, whatever.
Wisconsin was a little weird.
They're a little weird, but Illinois is far and away the most shithead group of fans that we've encountered this year, and I mean I'll say that includes Arizona fans, which is a crazy thing to say. So
100% agree.
I wonder what Indiana's got in store next week, but I'd be surprised if it tops this because look, I admired their student section and their arena because they stood the whole time. They were very loud, and I mean, I'll be the first to point out. I pointed it out. I mean, I've acknowledged Arizona. I've given them props, despite how much I hate them. But I was like, when I first turned on the game, I'm like, wow, like now that's a real home arena. And like, what I would do to have that kind of home environment at Pauley Pavilion because we just do not. But yeah, on Twitter, it's just like it's a real middle school. Like, I mean, they were calling Tyler Bilodeau dildo the whole like anytime they reference Tyler Bilodeau, I'm like, you gotta. That's pretty weak.
Yeah. Yeah, you gotta have some better chirp than that. I mean, they do remind me of an Arizona. High acceptance rate. I think I looked it up last night. It was like 55%. I mean, Arizona's like what 80, 85, like way higher, but still in the same realm. Except they're doing 1 out of every 2 people that apply. And yeah, Twitter was an insane place to be last night as a UCLA fan. I mean, you take a look at the UCLA basketball final score tweet, like everyone in the comments is, you just lost to Yakachonis, or like these different memes in this, or Underwood, like, yeah.
So a lot of that I'm okay with because if UCLA had numbers like that on Twitter, I'd be hyped on it, and I would be doing the same shit. I mean, I do it to SC whenever I can. I just don't really think to do it to other random schools that we play throughout the season. But what I'll say is that the consistent mentioning of the LA Fires was not something I can say I expected. Like, coming from someone who has a serious emotional attachment to sports, if you got to resort to like real world disasters when chirping sports on Twitter, like, you got to have just nothing else going for you in life. And that's something that I really haven't seen from anyone else on Twitter. And we've played multiple teams since that happened and went down in LA, and all fan bases have their bad eggs. But there was a disproportionate amount last night from the Illinois fans. And when I tweeted off the SBS account saying, wow, I didn't realize like their fans were so shitty, I don't know if you saw it, but there were a ton of like Big Ten fan accounts that were kind of like sounding off in the comments or quote tweeting saying, oh, you have no idea. So give this 5 years, and I wonder if they're surpassing Arizona as our new rival in the Big Ten era. But yeah, bunch of shitheads, and not exactly looking forward to engaging with them. Or maybe I kind of am. It was a little fun talking shit with those people, and we'll see how it goes next time around. We only played them once this year, right? We don't see them again. So
yeah, just once. Hopefully they come to Pauley next year.
Oh, that'll be interesting.
That'll be good.
That'll be very interesting. But let's look forward. We've got Indiana on Friday, and pretty epic time slot, actually, for a change. We have, I want to say it's 5 p.m. on Friday night.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Big Fox, big noon, going back to football season. This is like their big slot, right? The 5 p.m. Friday night game.
What's the name for it?
I think it's Big Fox Hoops Showdown or something like that.
Everything's big. I love it.
Everything has to be big.
Just call it big, and then that's what they're gonna roll out. Remember, is the Sonic Blockbuster still a thing? I love that name. You don't remember that?
Sonic Blockbuster? No.
What? That was like Lonzo CBS era. That was like the prime like day game. Well, yeah. You don't get points for knowing the jingle, buddy. It was the they probably stopped doing. I'm gonna look that up. It was Sonic Blockbuster. Like it comes up, but there's no Wikipedia page that I was hoping it would have to give me like when they stopped calling it that.
Rundown.
Yeah. Well, I liked the name, so shout out to ESPN for running with the Sonic Blockbuster and RIP. Wait a minute, it's still a thing. Saturday's Sonic Blockbuster between number 1 Auburn and number 2 Alabama highlights. So there you go. It's still a fucking thing.
That's got to be an ESPN thing, no?
It is an ESPN thing. And you know why you probably haven't heard of it or it's not memorable is because of that god-awful theme song. The ESPN college basketball theme song. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, it's pretty tough.
Terrible. You know, it's like doom, doom, boom, 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 doom, boom.
We didn't think we were going to have enough to talk about when I heard doing jingles.
But anyways, going back to Indiana, 5 p.m. tip-off, Friday night. What's the name of the college town in Indiana? Bloomington?
Bloomington.
In Bloomington. So how's this matchup looking? Start us off.
Jeez, well, I mean, for starters, Mike Woodson, head coach, announced that he's going to resign at the end of the season. It's always an interesting dynamic when your head coach pretty much gets let go mid-season, but still gets to finish out the season. I've always thought that that's a sort of strange concept.
Dead man walking.
Yeah, exactly. But obviously, his guys are still playing for him because just last night they went into East Lansing and beat Michigan State, which I think Michigan State's now lost 3 out of their last 4.
What a unraveling it's been for them.
Yeah, and it doesn't get any easier for them too.
Oh my God, the rest of their schedule. When I was reading it, I couldn't believe what I was looking at. That's worse than what UCLA football had in this past season.
Yeah, no, it's a gauntlet. But they're 15-10, 6-8 in the Big Ten. I mean, fans, Indiana is Assembly Hall is a mecca of college basketball. I hope to get out there one day because a lot of history, Indiana Hooters basketball. This season, unfortunately, not so much. They've struggled mightily, especially inside the conference. A lot of high hopes coming into the conference. We got some familiar faces too on the roster. One in particular from used to be a Wildcat, Mr. Omar Ballo.
Oh boy!
We're gonna have a face-off with Ballo and then Miles Rice from Washington State, who I believe was the Pac-12 Freshman of the Year just last season. And I was hoping UCLA would get him because that dude was a stud, or still is a stud, and in their starting rotation. But I think this is a game that UCLA, I mean, you're going to win the turnover battle. We know that. We saw it last night on the glass, right? Can Mara match up against Ballo down low? That is as well as anyone, that's a physical presence down low. So can Mara and Bilodeau combo match up with that? I think that's what's going to be a big difference maker on the glass. And then how's UCLA going to handle another Big Ten road environment? Assembly Hall is going to be the exact same, if not louder than what they just experienced last night. So it'll be an interesting one. But you look at the two teams on paper, and UCLA is the better team all day.
No, agreed. Indiana currently sits at 6-8 in conference play, 15-10 overall. Got a couple of bad losses strung in there. They got absolutely wiped by Illinois by 25 points. They had a loss at Northwestern. But with the strangeness of this conference and just with the kind of the circle of suck, where it can go full. Have you seen those online? The circle of suck where it's like
Yeah,
every
that's what
team
you're
has
talking
beaten
about.
one by each other by transitive property. So like it's so full circle in this conference that there's no way you're going to look back at a team's previous record and who they've who they've beaten and who they've lost to and really kind of draw any conclusions. Just looking at what they've done recently, that win against Michigan State on the road is absolutely impressive. Only lost by 3 to Michigan, who slapped us off our own court. And then a bunch of close losses as well. They only lost by 5 at Purdue, lost by a point to Maryland, which also gave us a whooping. So their record and their position in the Big Ten rankings might not really indicate too daunting of a task, but I'm expecting a very tight one. What are we thinking for the opening line spread wise? I'm gonna go first, and I'll say UCLA plus 2.5, maybe.
I was gonna say the other way. I think we might be 2.5-point favorites.
Really?
I feel like these ESPN or the sports betting modules always line up with Ken Palm, and Ken Palm's got us as a favorite in this game. Like,
Okay.
It's so crazy because you look at Ken Palm and then you look at the Vegas opening line. It's like point difference, if that, all the time.
Yeah.
I think they use Ken Palm honestly to sort of make some of their lines or like those type of metrics. But it should be a close one. I mean, like you mentioned, their schedule so weird. These results, I'm looking at them right now.
None of it makes sense.
They lost. None of it makes sense. Like literally at all. They lost by 25 against Iowa, who was just getting dog walked by people. I think they won tonight, but and then close loss to Purdue, like you said, beat Michigan State. The one thing that I think benefits UCLA about this move to the Big Ten Conference, Washington and USC are on the softer end of the spectrum. Teams like Indiana have to play Purdue and Michigan State twice in a season typically.
Yeah.
Like, could you imagine having to those are the games, right? Like we're getting Washington twice, 2 wins. We're getting USC twice, should be 2 wins. And Oregon has proven to be pretty soft. So that's 6 Big Ten wins right there that our old Pac-12 friends that are just sort of handing them over to us. And these guys got to sort of go through the gauntlet playing Indiana twice, Illinois twice. I was just
you know what Mick would say in response to that, right? You know what Mick would say in response?
What would he say?
How many times have we seen the Statue of Liberty? That offsets because of the travel that UCLA has to do going west to east. Ask Eric Musselman.
That's true. Yeah, I guess it does offset. We'll take our wins on the West Coast when we can get them because we've proven we haven't been able to do it back east.
Yeah. No, big time. But we'll see how it all plays out.
ESPN Matrix got us at 58% to win this game, so.
So am I being a hater with that plus 2.5? Yeah, being a little bit of a hater.
A little bit of a hater, but I mean, we haven't done anything to show you why we can win on the road, so I don't discredit that take.
This is actually a pretty interesting new rivalry that we can explore. I mean, you've got – I don't want to loop us in with Indiana's status because they are so far and away the first blue blood out of the blue blood discussion. UCLA is still – in the blue blood list, but it's time to get busy. So this is kind of the battle of I'm not going to use the term washed, but it's historic college basketball programs that make the college basketball landscape a whole lot better when they're good and relevant, but are certainly looking for some modern success in the form of national championships. So I'll take a win over someone of that rank all day long.
I mean, they're desperate. They're calling for it. Their last Final Four was in 2002. They're, only a couple Sweet 16s in this century. So
yeah, you can't. I don't mean that I do not compare UCLA to Indiana. We are head and shoulders above them in terms of program history, but they are a historic program. I will give them that, and we owe them an ass whooping, belt to ass.
The house that Steve Alford built.
That's right. That's all the more reason to apply belt to ass. You know what I do like? Okay, what's the name of it? It's I love college basketball arena names that give you a real smelly old gym vibe. I love the term Assembly Hall. I love the Allen Field House. Terms like that just get my college basketball blood pumping. I feel like I'm missing a big one where it's just like kind of like an abnormal name as opposed to like the State Farm Center.
Yeah, and this thing goes like up, like it is like it's almost like the wall at the the Clippers Intuit Dome. It's an interesting looking place.
Speaking of interesting looking places, have you used Vanderbilt's arena? They've got to be violating some code. I feel like I'm having a stroke watching their basketball games because like the court just doesn't end.
Yeah, no, I've also heard that Assembly Hall has a lot of obstructive views, like seats literally behind walls, like to where the point where you can't even, the court's not even visible in your seat. So if you're ever a Bruin fan traveling on the road and going to go see an Assembly game at Assembly Hall, you better make sure that you can see from your seat.
What's the capacity?
17,000.
Oh man, that's huge. I bet you they sell it out too.
And they're going to sell it out. Oh, 100%.
And here I am saying that the only way UCLA turns around its home court environment is to remove 4,000 seats. And I do stand by that, by the way. Pauley Pavilion should be a 9,000-seat arena.
Or we start the SBS 108 section.
Yeah, or the SBS 108 section just expands so vastly that they have to add a third deck and add the 300s, perhaps. But yeah,
one can dream.
Yeah. On that note, if you're listening to the show, buy your SBS reserved discounted seats right now if you're looking for a safe space to be a true Bruin fan and to make some noise, stand on defense, and have some fun, because that is all we are trying to do here is to service you, the Bruin fan, and make things fun and loud again in Pauley Pavilion. I believe that's all we've got today. Kyle, do I have your blessing to wrap this one up?
That's all we got.
Yeah, dude.
I have your blessing. Buy your ticket. Someone's got to do it. Someone's got to be in Pauley, standing loud. And Ross will lead us in some 8 claps and some chants.
That's the thing, dude, is that even if this flops and it's just me, I'm still going to be leading half the chants in the fucking arena. So nothing changes for me. Yeah. Well, cool, man.
Hopefully a win Friday.
Yep. All right. That's all we've got. And we'll be back at it next week, recapping Friday night's game as well as the Tuesday night game against Minnesota back at Pauley Pavilion. But until then, be well. Have a great weekend, and as always, go Bruins. Thank you, Kyle.